Hey, this is the World Advice Channel 2. What I want to talk about today is the problem with Donald Trump's UN General Assembly speech. So for this video, I'll explain the problem with not only his speech, but the lesson that there is to learn when it comes to this notion that Donald Trump is going to be our savior, which in America, do they ever, at least a lot of, not all, but a lot of them believe Donald Trump is going to be the savior of not just America, but if anything, the whole world. And why this should serve as a lesson that he is not going to be the savior. So now that I mention that, let's get started. So when it comes to the problem with the UN General Assembly speech, the first thing I want to get across is first and foremost, the problem with his message he has made about immigration, okay? And later on, I'll get to the other thing main thing at least, that he also mentioned that is also stupid, okay? So now let's expand further on the immigration statement that he made. And the whole thing that European countries are going to hell, Western European countries to be more exact, are going to hell because of uncontrolled immigration. So first and foremost, when it comes to immigration, the first thing I want to get across is that the reason why immigration is actually causing as much problems in Britain, France, Germany, all those places, like why are people from backgrounds getting in issues and becoming radicalized, like the Muslim community, more specifically the Arab community, or even the amount of black people getting into trouble and so on and so forth, with the law and crime and stuff, which I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of problems that are happening in Europe, Western Europe, specifically Britain, that is happening due to the amount of immigrants coming in. But of course, like anything in the world, critical thinking is required, not just face value thinking. And a lot of the reason why a lot of this stuff is happening is actually the fault of conservatives like Donald Trump. Because the thing about white society that I have noticed that is a common trend that they've been doing for nearly hundreds of years, and it's definitely not changed in recent times, is that they have a way of mistreating people who they interact with in one way, shape, or another, whether they go to their countries or the people come to their countries, especially referring to the second latter in recent history that stretches back at least a few decades for that matter, shit like that, a lot of that stuff, the issues they have with other communities of people, other races to be more exact, is actually their own fault. Okay, now let me explain. The reason why the British community, British people, I'll just use Britain as an example when it comes to explaining my point about why they're having so much problems with immigration for, of course, Western Europe. So yeah, I'm going to use Britain as an example. The truth of the matter is Britain is having a lot of these issues because they have this way of terrorizing, ostracizing, communities of people of color, which, believe it or not, for the first time ever, it seems it's actually not black people receiving the majority of the hate. It's actually more Muslims, Arabs receiving the majority of the hate. The hatred for us will always be the most intense, but the hatred for Arabs and Muslims is more widespread for the British public, okay? And the truth of the matter for the British public, the reason why a lot of them are becoming so radicalized is because of their extreme hatred, discrimination, ostracization that they have, of course, of Arab people, which just encourages them to become radicalized, and of course, through radicalization, they are more likely to embrace ideologies that they would have never, if things were not going that way, they would have never embraced in a million years. So in short, it's actually, a lot of it is actually their own fault, because they never had this problem before. Muslim immigrants to Western nations for decades. Muslims, Arabs have been immigrating en masse to the Western world since like the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s onwards, until of course September the 11th, 2001, which changed everything. So why is it that pre 9/11 era, to sum it up, they never had these problems, but now they're having problems now? It's because of the extreme discrimination they experience, which has encouraged greater radicalization ostracization, as well as for the black community, the ostracization, discrimination, and so on and so forth, is actually, guess what? Has produced a lot of people who are isolated from society and are more likely to think the streets, the gang life is the only way out. And whose fault is that? That's conservatives, because they're the ones who've been discriminating against people of color, whether it could be blacks, Arabs, even now Indians for that matter. Oh boy, are they getting a lot of hate, for crying out loud. My God, I've never seen anything like this. So yeah, when it comes to people of color, the three groups I mentioned, or even other ones, that's the environment they create in Britain, and that's why a lot of them gets, a lot of these issues that they have is actually the conservative people's fault. Even when it comes to uncharted immigration, a huge amount of immigration, it's because the left wing becomes more radicalized because of the extreme hatred and racism, that the right wing puts out there. So it becomes a case of, instead of like, okay, we have a legitimate point, there's too many people coming in the country all at once, it becomes a case of, if you think there's people coming in the country is a problem, then you're a racist, which is of course the right wingers' fault for that. They have no enough fucking blame for that themselves, especially the British, when you realize they've been spending literally for the past few centuries, immigrating to other countries in the world, just conquering the people and calling it their nation. And no matter how you look at it, they've been immigrating to other countries. Such as the fact there's literally probably easily over 200 million Americans, white Americans specifically, if not 100 million, who can directly trace their lineage for the most part back to Britain. Surprise, surprise, surprise. So what does that show you? So that's exactly what I'm trying to get across. So a lot of that stuff that's happening is your own freaking fault for that. So to blame, the liberals, elites for all this stuff that Donald Trump is trying to get is stupid. It's actually conservatives' fault. So that's my first point, okay? And that's the first thing, main thing, at least for this video, I'm trying to get across why Donald Trump is wrong, okay? The second reason why Donald Trump is wrong is it comes down to the fact that his idea of global warming being a hoax. He said it was a hoax, and the truth of the matter is that is so stupid. Because the truth of the matter is, even when you get past the fact that common sense would indicate that obviously something like car engines, the gasoline that comes from cars can of course make things hotter, such as the fact when it's snowing, like you turn on your car, for that matter, to heat it up, and the snow around you starts melting. Now try having billions of people drive every day. Some way, somehow, it's not going to make something like the North Pole and the South Pole, which is made up of snow too, start to gradually, over the course of decades, start to melt. Some way, somehow, that is a hoax. But anyway, once you get past the common sense, that it proves that global warming is real. The truth of the matter is, when it comes to Donald Trump's statement about global warming being a hoax, common sense would indicate that even if there's a chance it's a hoax, I'd rather take a risk of, like I was saying before, of course, continue with what I was saying before. But anyway, let me continue. I'd rather take a risk of course, not really taking the risk of the world coming to an end. Common sense would indicate for that matter. Because I don't want to take the risk of the world coming to an end, because once the world comes to an end, because of environmental damage and change, like how you can't turn back the clock, like we can some way, somehow create these massive spaceships that can literally land on Pluto. We can create some way, somehow, all these sophisticated military weapons, but some way we can't create an electric car. But I don't know. Anyway, some way, somehow, that's not possible, for that matter, okay? Besides, the main point here is, aside from my personal opinion here about if we can create electric cars or not, the truth is there hasn't been enough effort put into creating alternative energy, like of course electric cars and stuff, which is stupid, because why do I want to take a risk, of course, of doing something that can screw up the world permanently forever, versus, just simply doing something about it. Because the truth of the matter, to explain my point in even clearer detail, it's better, whether global warming is a hoax or not, to not take the risk of it, of the world coming to an end by actually doing something about it, than not taking the risk at all, of course, of finding better ways to deal with the issues global warming is causing, and then it ends up, you know what, guess what, screwing up the world. So that's another reason why Donald Trump is stupid, because it's better to take any thing that offers a possible risk seriously so you can prevent the worst from happening. It's common sense. But anyway, Donald Trump's an idiot, as I think we all know. So in general, to sum up the message of the video, is not only what I said here, it also shows you that Donald Trump is not the savior that he makes himself out to be. Because a lot of people make him out to be the savior who's going to save the world forever, but he's not going to save the world. I'm sorry, man. I'm not going to hide my words. He's just going to screw things up. So, and this UN general speech has just proven it like everything else. He's just going to screw it up, just like inflation. Has it gone much better? Because from out here in America, it's still expensive. So, in short, Donald Trump is not going to save the world. He's an idiot, and the UN general speech just showed how dumb he is. And that is all to say, and I'm out. Bye.